You've heard of Niagara-on-the-Lake, its wineries and charm and historic atmosphere, horse-drawn carriages and all of that. But have you ever considered living here? Well, in today's video, we are going to take you on a map tour of Niagara-on-the-Lake, take you on a deep dive into this quaint, historic, picturesque area of Niagara. We're going to break down the different living areas, tell you how much homes are costing in each area, what there are to do and things that attractions in each area, how to get around in Niagara-on-the-Lake and outside to Toronto, GTA, into the States. So whether you're downsizing or simply trying to get away from the daily grind of the GTA, the concrete jungles of any major city in Ontario, Canada, or even the world, dreaming of what it would be like living in wine country, then you've come to the right channel. We're going to show you exactly what it's like to live here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And if you stay to the very end, like I always do, I'll share with you a fantastic gem of a local hotspot that you're not going to want to miss. And if you end up living here, you're going to want to try this place out. I'm Scott White, and along with my wife, Ellen, we are the real estate duo of living in Niagara with the Ellen and Scott team at Revel Realty. And we specialize in helping people just like yourself move into the Niagara region. So whether you were thinking of making such a move in 9 days or in 9 months, do not hesitate to give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. We will make this transition extremely smooth because we know what it's like living here in the Niagara region. I was born in this area. Ellen and I live here, and we simply love everything to do with Niagara. And also, if you find this video informative, educational, and hopefully even entertaining, I really hope that you would hit the like button, subscribe, and you may even want to turn on the notifications so that you may be the first people to know of anything happening here in the Niagara region, the real estate market, where to go, things to do, places to eat, and everything about living in Niagara. And today we are going to look specifically, as I've already said, into Niagara-on-the-Lake. Packed with history, exquisite scenery, community charm, and more wineries per square foot than anywhere else in all of Canada. Niagara-on-the-Lake is in a league all of its own. Let me share my screen. We'll jump onto the map and we'll show you where Niagara-on-the-Lake is in comparison to the rest of Niagara. Here you can see it here highlighted in the upper northeast corner of Niagara is Niagara-on-the-Lake. Thorold to the immediate south and a little bit also to Niagara Falls. You see here is Fort Erie, Port Colborne, Wainfleet, Pelham, Welland, and Lincoln, including Grimsby. A lot of people in the Niagara-on-the-Lake do commute outside of Niagara-on-the-Lake to St. Catharines and to Hamilton, Toronto, Burlington, Oakville. So we're going to pop ourselves out a little bit, get us in focus to where Niagara-on-the-Lake is in comparison to the GTA. If you've watched any of our other videos, St. Catharines map tour or the Niagara Falls map tour or even the Pelham map tour, you know that the QEW or the Queen Elizabeth Way is the major thoroughfare to leave the Niagara region, and that includes Niagara-on-the-Lake, especially if you're heading up to Toronto in that area. If you're heading further going south or west towards London and stuff, you could take Highway 3 or a number of different other highways. But if you're living in the north end of the Niagara region, including Niagara-on-the-Lake, the QEW is pretty much your main way of getting out of the Niagara region. The QEW, for those of you who are outside of Ontario, is called the Queen Elizabeth Way. It varies between a 6-lane highway up to an 8-lane highway, depending on where you are. As you get closer to Toronto, it can branch off into 9 lanes, collector lanes and main lanes as well. But here in the Niagara region, it is basically a 6-lane major highway. The speed limit ranges between 110 kilometers to 100 kilometers, depending on where you are on the QEW. but most people travel a minimum probably of 120, some going to 130, 140. Not myself. I'm a law-abiding citizen, so on the most part. So that's the QEW, and that is the main way of getting into Toronto via car. So here is the QEW, the main thoroughway of getting into Toronto. There are other means by which to get to Toronto. You don't have to stay on the QEW. There is Lakeshore, which it takes you through all the little towns, Oakville, Mississauga. It runs right along the lake. It is a more scenic tour, but you're going to go into traffic lights and stop signs, so it's going to take you longer. Without traffic from the edge of here, Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is basically the Garden City Expressway between St. Catharines and Niagara-on-the-Lake. The Garden City Expressway goes over the Welland Canal. From here to Toronto, without traffic, it could take you about an hour and a half, which doesn't happen very often. We usually have traffic, and if you're going during rush hour in the morning or on the way coming home, traffic can get tied up. And anyone in the Niagara region knows it begins usually getting tied up going into Toronto around 8 o'clock, maybe 7:30, right here at the Red Hill or Centennial exit on the east end of Hamilton, and it will follow you all the way along the QEW right into Toronto. Midday after 9:30, 10 o'clock, it's going to be stop and go in different areas, but it's still going to be some heavy traffic. If you're going into Toronto from here at the Garden City Expressway into Toronto, it could take you up to 2.5, maybe even 3 hours if the traffic is really bad. But the good news is you don't have to stay on the QEW. There is here the 407. This is a toll highway that can take you to the north part of Toronto or the east part of Toronto near the airport. And it is usually free of traffic. One of the guarantees of the provider of the 407 is that it will never have rush hour traffic, partly because they have such high fees, in my opinion, but that's beside the point. If you want to pay those fees, you can get into Toronto rather quickly. Although if you want to get to downtown Toronto, you're still going to have to jump onto here to the 403 or the 401 to do that. And in these areas here, you could hit some traffic midday, morning, throughout the day going into Toronto. Now, I'm going to back up here and talk about Niagara-on-the-Lake, traveling in Niagara-on-the-Lake, because as I said, from the Garden City Expressway right there in that borderline between St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, that's the time travel it's going to take you to get into Toronto. But if you live here in the upper southeast corner of Niagara-on-the-Lake, it would take you about 10, maybe 15 minutes to get from this corner to this corner to get under the QEW. So that could add 10 to 15 minutes of travel time. If you're down here in Queenston, which is the southeast corner of Niagara-on-the-Lake, you're right here at the 405, which is another major highway, 4-lane highway. Very little traffic usually on that particular highway, so you can get over there rather quickly. But if you're in the middle of in here, it still can take you around 10-15 minutes to get to the Garden City Expressway. Now, also, if you are a jet setter, if you like to travel or you have to travel for work, let me quickly share with you 4 international airports that are available for us in Niagara. As for international airports, of course, we have the Toronto International Airport just outside of Mississauga, in and about here. It's easily accessible by the 407, so if you wanted to get there without traffic, you can always use the 407, and it would take you from this point here along the QEW, it would take you about an hour, 20 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. The Monroe International Airport here in Hamilton, you can get there in about 45 minutes. Buffalo International Airport in about around here. Again, you would take the QEW to the Peace Bridge and into Buffalo and get the Buffalo International Airport, and that's the second largest airport in the region. It goes everywhere in the world. Toronto is the largest airport, not only in the region, but of Ontario. Hamilton would be the third largest, very comparable to Buffalo. And then we have a little airport right here, and that is in Niagara Falls, New York. A lot of people here in the Niagara region from Niagara-on-the-Lake and beyond will travel south using Niagara Falls Airport. It is a small airport. It has 2-hour free parking for people dropping off and picking people up. Usually cheaper than flying from Toronto and much more convenient for those of you living in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So is Buffalo. Buffalo is also very easy. It's about 35, 40 minutes. All depends on how much time it takes you to cross the border. And one of the nice things about traveling in the state from Buffalo or Niagara Falls, New York airports is that you pass customs going into the States while driving and not at the airport, which can save you some time at the airport. So now let's jump into Niagara-on-the-Lake itself and take a little map tour of the little towns and hamlets of Niagara-on-the-Lake. And we're going to begin our tour here in Old Town, again in the upper northeast corner of Niagara-on-the-Lake. And you can see it borders here Lake Ontario and the Niagara Gorge. You can get some lovely homes along this stretch of Old Town with beautiful panoramic views of the gorge, the Niagara River, and across the border to Niagara Falls, New York. Along here, of course, you can get along the beach, and you can see Toronto on a clear day. And talking about travel, if you have a speedboat, you can get there from Niagara-on-the-Lake to Toronto in about 30, 45 minutes, depending on how fast you travel. Old Town is what I call Hallmark living. Like, this is like living in a Hallmark movie 24/7, 365 days a year, full of 19th century architecture, great boutique shops, historic charm. You really can't beat Niagara-on-the-Lake Old Town. Homes here are selling for about 1.2 million up to 2.5 or more, especially if you get along the water here, the gorge, or the beach here on Lake Ontario. It has a great walkable scale. You can get anywhere in Old Town without a car by walking it, but if you want to get outside of Old Town, you most likely need a car. But this charm, this luxury does come with a price tag. It is one of the most expensive places to live in all of Niagara. Still very affordable if you're moving from a $2 million home in Toronto. What you can get here in Niagara-on-the-Lake is bigger, larger, and usually right on the water. And one of the greatest things about living in Old Town Niagara-on-the-Lake, in my opinion anyway, is the Shaw Festival. It's a world-renowned festival that has been in operation over 67 years. It was first started as a showcase for the productions and artistry of Bernard Shaw. People from all over Niagara, Ontario, Canada, and even the world come to Niagara-on-the-Lake Old Town simply to come to the Shaw Festival, which runs from April to September. And it has some fantastic productions. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, ideal and great for families and kids. There is also an interactive murder mystery show called Murder on the Lake. You wouldn't want to miss that one. And then, of course, there's Anything Goes, which is currently running right now at the Shaw Festival. Anything Goes has a little bit of history for myself because my mother was the conductor of the live orchestra during this play, Anything Goes. Now, she wasn't at the Shaw Festival. The show was at the small venue of the Operatic Society in Port Colborne. Much smaller venue, much less known, but she was still there. And I remember it was back in the 1970s when I was a wee little kid, and I just remember the rehearsals and being a part of that. And it's just a cool memory for me. So the Shaw Festival has a number of different venues to show off its performing arts. The main theater is called the Festive Theater. There's also the Jackie Maxwell Studio, and of course, the Royal George. Now, if you watched my previous video here in Niagara-on-the-Lake on the neighborhood tour, you got a little bit of history of the Royal George. I don't have time to get into that right now, but if you want more history about the Royal George, you want to go back to that video, watch that. But it is a historic venue, intimate venue, and sadly enough, this is the last year that it will be on the Shaw Festival. It will be closing down at the end of this season and will be remodeled with over $15 million remodel, which is going to try to keep some of that historic character, but it won't be exactly the same. So if you want the history of this particular venue, this particular theater, you're going to want to come to the Shaw Festival and see one of its shows at the Royal George this year in the 2025 season. If you live here in Old Town, the theater isn't just some place you go to, even though you can walk to it from your front door. it's more than that. It is the lifestyle. And if that interests you, Old Town may be the place you want to live. Or maybe you don't want to go to Old Town, you want to get away from that area a little bit. Maybe you want a little more affordable housing, less than $1.2 million, $1.4 million. This area right here in this circle is called Garrison Village, or the Village. And it has houses, both historic and newer houses. This area right here has a lot of newer homes here. Townhouses, semi-detached, and detached homes. And prices in this area here, in the Village area, are running between around $850,000 to $1.4 million, depending on where exactly you want to live in this particular area, and the amenities, the size of the house, the quality of its finishes, etc. But that's what you can get in this area, a little bit cheaper than what you can get in historic Old Town. It has some shops, it has some venues, especially here in the Village down here, and it has its own amphitheater. Little amphitheater, mind you, but it has its own little amphitheater. And it's still walking distance of Old Town and the Shaw Festival. Travel away from Old Town and the Village down Niagara Stone Road or Highway 55, we come into this area here called Virgil. And Virgil is the commercial retail hub of the Niagara region. Down this main stretch here, you'll have major grocery stores, Shoppers Drug Mart, a bunch of little restaurants. A little bonus for you all, the Twisted Bar right here on Niagara Stone Road is one of Ellen and my favorite Mexican restaurants. You may know this if you watched some of our previous videos. I lived in Mexico City for about 4 years. My two oldest daughters were born in Mexico City. If you're Mexican watching this, yep, they are Chilangas and Canadians. My wife is part Mexican. Her grandfather was a Mexican national. And so we love our Mexican heritage, our Mexican friends, and the country of Mexico. And we're always looking for great Mexican restaurants. And the Twisted Bar is one of our favorites here in the Niagara region. So I might highlight this in another video down the road. But right now, we'll give a little plug for the Twisted Bar. If you happen to find yourself in Niagara-on-the-Lake or Virgil here and you're looking for a Mexican restaurant, try the Twisted Pig. I would label Virgil as the family-friendly town of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Not to mean that the other areas are not family friendly, but Virgil hosts most of the schools of the Niagara-on-the-Lake area. Crossroad Public School is in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and it is rated as one of the best schools in all of Niagara region. It has a great reputation for community involvement and interaction between its staff and teachers with the students and community and parents. And then there's St. Michael Catholic Elementary School, and it boasts an EQAO score well above provincial averages, with a 92% reading rate and an 88% in writing in grade 6. There's one other elementary school here in Niagara-on-the-Lake region, and that is St. David's Elementary School. All these elementary schools run from junior kindergarten to grade 8. St. David Public School has a great reputation for caring staff and a supportive learning environment. Community polls rating it as excellent year after year after year. That's the only school outside of Virgil in Niagara-on-the-Lake. As for secondary schools, if you have high school aged children, there used to be the Niagara-on-the-Lake High School, but it closed down in 2010 due to lack of attendance. And now high school students are transported via bus to Lower Seacourt School in St. Catharines or A.N. Myers and Niagara Falls. So those are schools that you have in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and most of them are found in Virgil. And the homes in Virgil are running between around 700,000 to $1.1 million. And if you zoom out of Virgil, follow 4 Mile Creek Road, we come to this area here, which is called St. David's. It is named after a historical figure in Canadian history. Funny enough, he is not a saint. I don't know where the term Saint David comes from. His name was David Seacourt. Yes, he was a relative of Laura Seacourt. We talked about her when we were doing the home tour in St. Catharines, but her cousin, David Secord immigrated into Upper Canada after the War of 1812, 1814. He was a British Loyalist who was living in the States, and after the war, he wanted to leave that atmosphere and what they were standing for and came to St. David, and his name lives on in this area, which is the oldest Loyalist settlement in the area. It's set against hills and vineyards and ravines. Home prices in St. David runs around $850 to $1 million. That's the little hamlet of St. David. And if we run along here, along this stretch of road, York Road or Highway 81, notice how close the 405 is, which is a main highway that can get you to the QEW very quickly. But if we follow York Road 81 over to here, we come to the hamlet of Queenston. I would identify Queenston as a place with history, space, and views. Again, Queenston runs along the Niagara River. Beautiful scenery. Queenston, or more specifically, Queenston Heights, right in this area here, is known for the Battle of Queenston in the War of 1812, where British and Canadian troops, partnering with Indigenous supporters, held back the American invasion. It is here where the famous general, Sir Isaac Brock, took a fatal blow. As a result of that blow and his leadership, that led us to the victory of Queenston Heights. And that's why all throughout Niagara, you're going to find streets called Isaac or Brock. You'll find Brock University, or here, Brock's Monument. Brock's Monument is a 185-foot tall concrete monument on the hill of Queenston Heights. I remember coming to Queenston Heights as a young lad, going with my family where my mother played at the bandstand there every Sunday afternoon, and I would go up Brock's Monument 3, 4, 5 times. It is still worth the trek up the monument just for the scenic tour. And the good news is the bandstand still exists there in Queenston Heights, and it still holds free concerts every single Sunday afternoon. Sadly enough, my mom's not playing there anymore. But homes in the Queenston area are going to cost you in around $1 million to $3 million, depending on where you are, especially if you want to get along the Niagara Parkway facing the river. You're looking into $3 million homes. Now we're going to jump out of Queenston. Let's get on the 405 here, travel the 405 over here and get off right here and come into this newer subdivision called Glendale right here. Glendale is the newest subdivision of Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can see here it's right next to the outlet collection of Niagara Bath Pro shops. This outlet mall has a variety of name brand stores at outlet prices. White Oaks Conference Resort and Spa is a nice little place to get away. Right here is the Welland Canal. The Garden City Expressway is right here, which I was talking about earlier. I would say Glendale in relationship to Niagara-on-the-Lake is commuter access and affordability would define this area. You've got the easy access to the QEW, which makes it really simple to get to Toronto and Hamilton, Niagara Falls, and prices of homes are running between $600,000 to $800,000, the cheapest in all of Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's a great option if you're looking for convenience and affordability without leaving Niagara-on-the-Lake. Still giving you a great family-friendly atmosphere and a safe environment. So that's all the communities that you can find here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So let's move away from the map there and let's look at the socioeconomic environment of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Niagara-on-the-Lake is one of the most prestigious areas in all of Niagara. The average income is the highest average income in all of Niagara. The median household income is between $98,000 to $103,000. That's 25% above the national average and significantly higher than the Ontario median of $87,000. Employment is very low in the Niagara-on-the-Lake area at only 1.9%, comparable to Ontario's 4.9%. And it is a growing population. As we're looking at the map, Glendale, Virgil, and even into The village area, we have a lot more newer homes coming up there. But currently, there's a population of about 19,000 people in Niagara-on-the-Lake, an increase of about 9% since 2016. We see a very secure town and an extremely safe town as well here in Niagara Region. Maybe one of the safest areas in all of Niagara. There's a couple other areas that are really, really safe. Niagara-on-the-Lake would be right there on the top. So let's begin looking at this chart, and let's first of all look at the average price of a home in 2015. January 2015 was $620,000 in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Throughout the whole year, we saw a low price of $385,000, and so on average, houses were selling for around $525,000 in 2015 here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And the interesting thing is you can see from here, the price is going up until we hit 2022. Notice the beginning of 2022, February, March of 22, when the big boom of COVID ended, can I say it that way? And prices dropped drastically, made a huge drop, a very large drop that we've ever experienced before, and they haven't fully recovered. You can see here the low valleys continue to drop lower, and the highs, except for this one right here, also dropping lower. So from this point here, we see the prices going up. Now they're coming down. When is that lower price going to stop? We do not know for certain. We were hoping at the beginning of 2025 that we would see the market begin a rebound and start moving on that trend upward, but the uncertainty of tariffs and everything else has played a powerful impact upon our economy, and that is seen here with house prices here in Niagara-on-the-Lake and across our fine country. If we are to compare the average price over the past 24-month period from August 2024 to July 2025 and compare that from the previous year, we will be looking at a significant price reduction. Between August 2023 and July 2024, the average price of a house here in Niagara-on-the-Lake was $1,195,214. That same period between August 2024 to today, July 2025, we have seen a 78% decrease to $931,250. And we see that trend going down regularly. April was a high peak. We had $1,050,000 average sold price in Niagara-on-the-Lake in April. The first time in 2025 that we broke the average $1 million mark. So if you're thinking of making a move here to Niagara-on-the-Lake, this might be the absolute best time to do it. Prices may never be this low again. So if you're thinking of making this move in the next 9 days or 9 months, do not hesitate to give Ellen and myself a phone call, send us a text, shoot us an email, and we'll make this transition extremely smooth because that is what we love to do. So that pretty much wraps up our Niagara-on-the-Lake map tour, except for one thing, and you all know what it is if you've been watching our videos before, and that is for you to grab yourself a coffee, a tea, a hot chocolate, or a cold drink, and will meet me over at that gem of a shop that I want to introduce you to. So let's go over there and we'll close up our video. So did you have time to get yourself a coffee, tea, or a cold drink? I sure wish you could be here with me here at the Pie Plate, one of Niagara-on-the-Lake's gem of a cafe. I'm sorry you can't be here with me, but hey, if you're thinking of making a move here to Niagara-on-the-Lake and you want to tour some houses, give us a call and we'll treat you to a nice little drink and treat from the Pie Plate. One of the things the Pie Plate is most famous for is its homemade pies. Cherry pie, strawberry pie, apple pie. They make them every day and they sell out very quickly. So if you want a nice fresh pie, you gotta get here to the Pie Plate here in Niagara-on-the-Lake really early. And today I got myself, I know I usually get myself a chai tea. Today I thought I'd go something a little bit different, and I got myself a strawberry matcha. I'm not a really big fan of matcha tea, but this is pretty good. I would order this one again. And of course, I got myself a little bit of a meal treat here. I'm probably going to say this wrong. Please forgive me. I know if I say this wrong, everyone's going to correct me. But I believe you say a focaccia bread, pizza bread. Nice crispy pepperoni on top. Nice, perfectly flavored. I love the crispiness of the bread and the pepperoni. Sprinkle a little bit of mozzarella, I believe, on top of that. It is worth a stop to visit here as well. So that brings us to the end of today's video, and I want to thank you all for stopping by, checking it out. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please hit that like button, turn on your subscriptions and your notifications so that you may be one of the very first people to hear of anything happening here in the Niagara region. I'm Scott White, and along with my wife Ellen, we're here to help you make your best life here in Niagara.